We are the DANSIC21. We are the Danish Social Innovation Club. We are a non-profit organization of volunteers run by both Danish and international students, currently enrolled and also recent graduates. Our aim is to contribute to a society that is socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable. And at DANSIC, we just aim to help and inspire different actors in society to use social innovation, interdisciplinary work for solving current societal challenges. And yes, as you can see, we are 26 current members, and we have 1 year, one event per year, and this time is this series of webinars, and then we have our final event, which is a case competition we're having late May. Yeah, so this is the team, the DANSIC21 team of volunteers. It's very nice. It's fun to work with the different, both international students and Danish students. It's a very nice place to be. Yeah, and then we have a little bit about our circular challenge, our case competition. It's a case competition over 3 days. It's 2 cases, and of course there is a winning prize. What is it? This year we are organizing this case competition on circular economy. The DANSIC21 Circular Challenge is a case-solving event that aims to address business challenges using circular principles. And as you can see, it's for both enrolled students and recent graduates, currently or previously enrolled in a Nordic or African university. And you can sign up in teams of 2 to 4 or as single individuals, and then we will just help you finding a team. And as you can see, you can sign up at our dansic.innoflow.io. And we just encourage every student or recent graduate, go do it. It's going to be very nice. It's going to be very interesting, and it's just going to be fun. So go sign up if you're into this. It's going to be nice. Yeah, and just a little bit about the agenda and our speaker, Annette Lendal. She is an expert on upstream innovation and circular economy packaging solutions. She has worked extensively for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as a project manager in the innovation team, for the and also being a co-author on the reuse book. She's also part of the Upstream Innovation Guide to Packaging Solutions, and today she supports the Ellen MacArthur Foundation part-time while working with the world's largest FMCGs on how to kickstart upstream innovation processes. Besides all of that, she also works with the Danish NGO Plastic Change as an external consultant. And prior to her work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, she was a consultant on international sustainable development projects at Rambo Management Consulting. And besides all of being a power woman, she also holds a master's degree in political science from Copenhagen University, with internships and exchange programs at the UN University of Peace in Costa Rica, the European Commission in Brussels, and Sciences Po in Paris. So we are very excited to be having Annette Lendal with us today, talking about upstream innovation. So I think that's it. So Annette, welcome to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amalie. I don't know if I can live up to that intro. Sounded like you were introducing Ellen MacArthur herself, but let's see how it goes. Hi everyone. I'm super excited to be here. It feels a bit like a trip down memory lane, since I was part of the DANSIC team in 2011, 2012, 2013, and then sat on the advisory board for a few years after that. So it's just amazing to see this energy and know that the spirit has continued, for sure. I'm going to talk about upstream innovation. I'm quite excited about this topic. It will focus on the sector that I'm, you could say, specialized in, which is packaging space, plastic space. But the principles are definitely applicable to other sectors. So I hope that you will find inspiration from this, even though you might not be working specifically in packaging or plastics. You can more see it as an example of how to apply this circular economy thinking. Before we head into it, I wanted to give you a bit of background on my journey, because now maybe you shared something and it could sound like it's been kind of a linear curve to get there. I wouldn't actually say so. It all started on a boat for me. I was on my second year in political science, and I was joining this sailing club that was organized at political science, and it was basically, I think, like 10 guys. They were 7 years older than me, and they had this sailing club for a long time. And I was just intrigued by the idea, not the fact that they were all guys at 7 years older, but more that they were doing these longer sailing trips and were really excited about sailing. So I joined one of the trips in the summer, and on the deck, the first day, I sit next to this guy called Stefan. And Stefan starts talking about his recent exchange at Harvard and social business, and why are we not doing more about this in Denmark, and it makes no sense, why not do business that has a purpose instead of just business. And I was really excited about Stefan and his story. And I had been doing a lot of conferences in many years as a volunteer for Model of United Nations. So through my high school years and also first years of university, I was playing these role games about how we solve the world's challenges through this idea of the UN and the resolution process. So we started talking, and basically Stefan was already envisioning this DANSIC thing in Denmark, and I got onboarded and helped create the idea of the conference and the tracks and how it all blends together. And that was really an amazing experience. And I think in many ways, for me, it set me on this trajectory towards working with societal challenges, primarily in my case within the environmental space, but definitely the starting point for this idea of mixing different brains and ideas, cross teams, solving problems. I was completely excited about that. So that also made me a consultant, and I would say for many years, my job was mostly focused on making Excel sheets and slides look nice, long hours, definitely also trying to solve some wicked problems, but long working hours. And I don't know, sometimes it actually didn't feel that meaningful. So in a way, it was a blessing in disguise when I was in a really bad skiing accident, and I got a severe concussion and a severe whiplash that forced me to quit consulting because it just didn't work out with the headache and the migraine and the long working hours. So soon I found myself on a ship at the Pacific Ocean, sailing across the Pacific Ocean in French Polynesia with this NGO Plastic Change. And it was basically my coach, my business coach, who asked me. I had quitted consultancy and I had no idea what to do. And he said, and then what do you do when you're off? Like, how do you relax? And I said, well, I mostly watch documentaries about the ocean and plastic and environmental issues. And he was like, why don't you work with it then? I was like, maybe I could, maybe I should. So I joined this little NGO Plastic Change in Denmark. At that point in time, they were sailing around the world. And we were taking samples of how much plastic was in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, documenting this state of plastic pollution. And that's also where I started meeting these more activist people, more environmentalist, inspirational people who really saw, a different way forward for the future, really challenged this idea of the conventional way of thinking. So I had always known Ellen MacArthur, to be honest. I have been sailing my whole life since I was a kid, and she is a big sailor, a big name in the sailing world. So I knew her, I knew the foundation, I got to know it more working in plastic change. So when there was the option to join EMF in the UK, I couldn't say no, and I joined them. And before long, I was standing on these very big stages around the world, speaking about big topics like reuse and upstream innovations to the world leading CEOs from the biggest companies in the world. So it's been quite been quite an unexpected journey, I would say, from a generalist into a very almost like expert or very topic specific geek on this idea of plastic and packaging over just the course of a few years. Today, as Amalie said, I moved back to Denmark recently. I now set up my own company. I work as a consultant to EMF. I also work for other companies. I only work half time to take care of my health. But I'm definitely feeling very lucky that I found my space and found my route, and DANSIC has played a big role in that. So that was a bit about my journey. Also, just to put in here, you know, you're welcome to interrupt me actually at any point in time. I've been doing a lot of presentations, so it won't interrupt my flow. You can just ask questions if you want to, but also there is a Q&A after. But just to say, if something is burning, just jump in. As I just briefly mentioned, I've been producing these 2 books, or writing these 2 books for the foundation, the reuse book and the Upstream Innovation guide, with some incredible colleagues at the foundation. And what I'm going to present today is based on this work. We've been testing it with some of the world's leading organizations. Ellen MacArthur is really an incredible place to work, because they have this network of amazing businesses with an incredible scale, where you can really test, but also, you could say, challenge the conventional way of thinking and possibly have a really big impact. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation, I won't go too much into it. It's an NGO focused on circular economy. You might already know it. And the basic idea that Ellen MacArthur Foundation has been set up to do is to challenge this idea of the linear economy and trying to create an alternative to them. So going away from the take, make, dispose, or take, make, waste economy into something different. And it really starts with asking these questions, right? Like, why is it that our cars are parked, 92% of the time? It makes no sense. Our offices are not being used even during working hours. Our clothing just hangs in that closet without being used, most of it. And 1/3 of the packaging that we produce leaks into the environment. It's these questions where you can be like curious, or also a little bit furious, that we're actually wasting our resources. So the whole idea behind circular economy, and I know you're going to work with this in the coming challenge, is how can we make an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design? And what does that mean? Well, at least from a packaging angle, but this applies actually to all sectors, it has a lot to do with avoiding waste from being created in the first place. So instead of focusing a lot of energy on how we deal with waste when it has been created, that waste that ends up in the environment, like trying to clean it up or trying to make art out of it, or what do I know? Let's try to instead avoid that it ends up there in the first place. And this is really the thinking, the mindset that we want to push as circular economy experts and geeks and passionates. So think about material selection, think about the packaging design, the business model, the manufacturing method, the shipping method, and the intended use before you think about collecting, sorting, and, for example, recycling technologies. That's what Upstream Innovation is all about. Closing the tap instead of starting to mop up the floor. And why is that so exciting? Well, there are many reasons, at least 6. As I just said, it's the easiest and fastest way to tackle plastic pollution, or pollution in general. You could see this as a waste agenda. More and more, we're seeing that these are the solutions that customers want. This is just one step from Unilever, where they're now tracking a positive relationship between the brands that have a strong sustainability focus and growth rates. So that's quite exciting that we can start really documenting that this is what the future customers want, also the current, but especially the future. This is really an agenda about business opportunities. And in the foundation, we rarely talk about the sustainability benefits, actually. Circular economy is an alternative growth paradigm. So it's very much about business opportunity and changing our economic system and the mechanisms of how we value actually just value, or measure value, you could say. And I'll give you a lot of examples later in this presentation that can hopefully convince you about that. It is, however, also, as a positive side note, a really efficient way of reducing our carbon emissions, circular economy, upstream solutions. For example, soda streams, make your own fizzy drinks at home model. It has a 90% lower carbon emission footprint than the regular buy it pre-made in a plastic bottle. So there are many more examples of how these solutions are really efficient carbon-wise. Also, we're seeing more and more legislation running in this direction. My old colleagues at the Commission have been quite efficient in producing some solid policies that are really challenging businesses who wants to continue selling many products in single-use packaging. And we're seeing more and more of these legislations that are forcing businesses to actually move away from this idea of single-use. So that's exciting as well. And finally, on a positive note, luckily, more and more businesses are on this way already. In EMF, they have developed something called the Global Commitment, which is it's a mechanism to ensure that businesses have the same definitions, the same targets, and report on a yearly basis on how they progress. And one of these targets has to do with reducing our virgin reduction of plastic. So you can see that if you have to reduce your virgin reduction of plastic that you put on the market, you need to move upstream towards elimination and reuse. And that's what I'm gonna show you today. How do you do this? Basically, we're trying to talk about a shift in mindset. So upstream innovation requires more than this traditional incremental improvement idea that we normally have, especially in the packaging industry. If you want to solve a packaging problem, you look at the packaging and you say, hey, can we make it a little bit thinner? Or can we take out this component and then design it better for recycling? And that's fine, but it's not really letting us to the full suite of opportunities that we have. And again, going even more upstream to design out that waste. That requires that we not just rethink the packaging, but that we also rethink the product or the business model. And it's this idea that I really want you to remember also in your own innovation challenge. Try to think beyond just the problem that's in front of you, which is often the packaging. Try to look in a broader and a systemic perspective and think about also the product itself, its formulation, its concept, its shape, its size, or the business model in terms of how it's delivered, the supply chain, the location of production, and how money is being made. I'm going to show a lot of examples that do this in different ways. I'm just going to pause for a second, take a sip of water, and see if there are any questions so far. Amelia, how are we doing?
Well, we have some questions, but I was thinking that maybe we should wait till the end and then we could just go through them there.
That's totally your call. If something is urgent, I trust you to just interrupt me.
I will interrupt you then.
Okay, so 3 ways of doing upstream innovation. There is a hierarchy, it's by intention, right? Start by looking at what can we eliminate. Then let's look at what cannot be eliminated. Can we at least make sure that it becomes reusable? So the same thing is being used over and over again. It's in its original form and for its original intended purpose. And then finally, and this calls for everything, let's make sure that it circulates so it doesn't become waste. These are the 3 routes, and I'm going to give you some examples of what this looks like around the world from some of the companies and startups that I've been working with in the past 2 years. Elimination. The easy way is just to look at sometimes the things that are right in front of you and get rid of them if they make no sense. So across Asia, most of Asia, Nestle has been having this little plastic film around the cap because they thought that people needed that reassurance that the bottle had not been opened. And then they realized that the bottle itself provides that functionality, right? If you open it, it clicks. And if that click sound, that ensures customers that the bottle has not been opened. So just removing this little film around the cap saved tons and tons of plastic because we're talking about a lot of units. So sometimes elimination can be the easiest way, the direct elimination. Sometimes you need to go a little bit more innovative. This is a startup from the US, Apeel, and they found a way to actually eliminate that plastic film around cucumbers. You know, we've always been told that the only way to ensure shelf life of vegetables is having this plastic packaging, and Apeel is actually proving that wrong. They have created a completely natural, edible spray. You put it on the cucumber, it keeps the moisture inside, oxygen stays outside, and the cucumber stays fresh. There is no waste. It's just an edible peel using nature. Here's another case from the UK, where they have developed these edible pouches and compostable pouches to substitute or eliminate the need for the sachets that we get with sauces when we order our takeaway meals. Again, it's quite a small fraction, but if you look at it all over the world, it ends up as a lot. And these sachets traditionally are completely unrecyclable. They often end up in the open space or in the environment because people don't think about it and they light and they fly away. So this is a really good example of how to, by rethinking the packaging and the system, they're creating these new solutions for home compostable or food compostable or edible, if you want to, sachets to contain sauces. InFarm is a case that I like because they are showing us this aspect of rethinking the business model, right? Here they're moving or changing completely the way products are done, the way products are produced, like producing much closer to where it's being sold, and thereby altogether eliminating a lot of the need for packaging. The same goes for KCPR. They're from Indonesia, and it's a little startup in Indonesia that has grown tremendously in the last years. I think it's such an inspirational example that we could use in Denmark about how to create a localized fresh food delivery with no waste. And in addition to only delivering fresh fruits and vegetables to consumers in reusable boxes, they have this principle of maximum transporting vegetables 60 kilometers from where things are produced. So it's this localized idea of production again, and then using some reusable packaging to create a zero waste model. Haven't seen any delivery company in Denmark being bold enough to do that yet. And finally, in the elimination space, you know, sometimes the solutions needs to happen at home or even closer at the very, very source. Here, TAP has created this filter that you just put on your actual tap, and that filters the water. So you don't need a big machine, or you don't need to go to the supermarket to get filtered water, but really just changing the product and changing the business model to eliminate a lot of waste, in this case, single-use plastic bottles. That was a little context on the elimination space. And I know that I'm throwing a lot of examples at you and I'm not going into details, and that's really on purpose because afterwards I will of course share the link to the Upstream Innovation Guide. I have it right here. And you can go look at that for all the details and these cases if you're excited about a particular one. So the reuse space, this is really where my passion started. I was so excited about this idea that instead of create all the single use, right? Like coffee cups and water bottles and the food we have, or the packaging we have from the food, it's insane. Isn't there a better way of doing this? Isn't it possible to go a little bit almost back to the old days where a lot of packaging actually used to be reusable, came back, was washed, and then refilled? I'm sorry for the background noise. My puppy is playing in my bed. And luckily, you know, I'm not alone with this excitement. In the past years, we've seen a lot of the big companies that we've worked with in EMF put out some very bold statements and targets on reuse. I just put some of them here, like Coca-Cola, who are now aspiring to go back up to 50% reusable packaging by 2030 in Brazil. Unilever has set this virgin reduction target of 50%, so like reducing the overall amount of plastic packaging on the market with 50%. That's insane amount of packaging, and that can only happen by going upstream, eliminating and reusing. And someone like Mars, you know, selling chocolate bars, that's something that's a little bit tricky just to come up with an immediate solution for what that would look like in a reuse model. But even they are saying, you know, let's put at least 10 pilots on the market and figure out how to do this in the coming years. So here comes some of the cases that I'm excited about. Everdrop from Germany, they show this idea of going solid first and foremostly. Like, let's take the water out of product. It makes no sense that we're traveling around water in the supply chain, but also as consumers. Why do I want to carry bulky trigger bottles with cleaning products that are 99% water? If I can buy a little tablet with the active ingredients, buy a trigger bottle once in my life, have it at home, put the tablet in, fill it with water, and create my own cleaning product. That's the essential idea here. And we're seeing this actually applied to many different sectors now. We're seeing, the obvious starting point was the shampoo bar, going from liquid to solid, eliminating the need for a shampoo plastic bottle. We're seeing toothpaste that goes into tablets instead of paste. And we're seeing a lot within this home care segment. We're going into these solids and creating a packaging model where the user buys this main packaging and keep it and have it for life. I think it's brilliant, and it saves so much waste in the supply chain, so much money as well, because waste is money. Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. Like, if you're looking at a product or you want to solve a solution containing water, is there a way to take that water out and add it where it's actually going to be used? Another exciting thing within this space is this idea of customization, right? So, it's actually quite old idea that you can mix your own sodas if you're in the cinema, or if you're in IKEA or whatever. But this is taken to a whole new level in recent years, with Coca-Cola and Pepsi leading this way with smart dispensing machines, where customers, they come with a bottle, the machine recognizes you, you don't need to pay, it knows who you are. And you can mix and match your own flavors, right? You can say, I want Pepsi with vanilla and cherry taste. I wouldn't want that, but if someone wants that, that's what you can choose. You can add your level of carbonation. And not only is that a benefit, of course, to me as a consumer, I can get the product exactly the way I want to. There is no waste because I have my own bottle with me. But back to this idea of the business sense in this circular economy. In this case, Coke, Pepsi, are getting so many valuable insights about our preferences, when we buy things, what we want, how much we want, and so on and so forth. So think about this customization as really a win-win for businesses and for users, and definitely for the environment, because we're eliminating a lot of waste when we're not pre-packaging the products on the shelves. So the dispensing machines are becoming more and more mainstream. Many retailers are implementing refill solutions where you can come and you can refill pasta or tea or coffee or whatnot. But Algramo is doing it in a bit different way. And I really like how they are trying to target another barrier that we see here, right? That you as a customer need to bring your own packaging to the supermarket or your bottle around the city to fill water or soda. So here the dispensing machine is coming to the user instead of the user coming to the dispensing machine. They created these small electric bikes. They go around in the city of Santiago. They're soon coming to Indonesia and London and New York. And basically, yeah, you can order a visit by this truck. In this case, it's a partnership with Unilever. So you can take these very, very famous brands like Omo and Quicks detergent, home care products in your bottle. Again, you keep it for life. It knows who you are. It has a little chip in it. Go to the machine, choose what refill you want, and you only pay for what you get. And here also Unilever can actually price the products 30% lower than if they were sold in the supermarket, because they're saving a lot of money on the packaging. So another good example of why this actually also makes business sense. Davadrop is from London, where I used to live. Here we have a little startup that's tiny, but they're great. And they made this, they took this idea from Mumbai. So traditionally in Mumbai, still more than 200,000 meals are delivered each day in these reusable boxes. So it's like massive, complex system of lunch delivery. And they're using these tipping boxes, all of them. Again, because it's smart, if everyone uses the same, it's much easier to create a system that's efficient. And lunch is being transported to where people they work. In London, they are doing it a bit, you could say, more westernized as takeaway meals or takeaway delivery, where again here, the idea of reuse, why it's so great, is that you can create a better user experience. You know, because this is not single use, this is supposed to go back to the producer. or in India, back to the home or houses of people cooking homemade lunches. You can design it in a better way, right? You can invest in the packaging because it's coming back. So you don't need to make it as cheap and as light as possible. Actually, it's an asset. Here, for example, in its aesthetics, that's clear, it's nice, but in the functionality, right? You can separate sauces from rice. It keeps heat much better. You can put it in the oven if you want to reheat it. There are so many benefits to actually having packaging as an asset instead of just something that is trashed right after you use it. And from the fashion industry, because I know that it's also one of the sectors that you're working on, and I think we're seeing this more and more. I just ordered some clothing from recycled content only clothing from Storm & Marie yesterday, and now there is an option to actually ask for that to be shipped in a reusable shipper. Lime Loop does the same, just in the US, and they are trying to make it a bit more, you can say, digital. So in this case, there is again a digital ID in the back. You can see where it's been before. You can track its environmental impact, so how many single-use shippers it replaced. And in the future, Lime Loop or brands using this might be able to track, when customers, for example, open it. So you can direct marketing exactly the moment customers open the packaging or communicate with them in a much more efficient way. The last example I took is from Coca-Cola Brazil, one of my all-time favorites, because it shows us how reuse can work at scale. Here we have the classic idea of reusable bottles, but in plastic, right? You can see the bottle itself is plastic, but it's refillable. It can go back to Coca-Cola, be washed and refilled up to 20 times, sometimes 30 times, depending on how shabby it looks, then it will go to recycling. So you're keeping the benefits of this reuse system, cost efficiency in the supply chain, but also having the benefits of plastic being much more light, economical, versatile, so on, than glass, sorry. So it's really like the best of both worlds. Coca-Cola, they decided to go for a standardized design. And as I said, in the case of Dapper Drop, there is some logic behind these models that you need to think much more in systems and industry-wide solutions. And interoperability, I can never say that word. Thinking about how many different users can have benefit of the same thing. That's really a main unlocking mechanisms to making these models work. So here Coca-Cola decided to go for the same design for all their bottles, and that's really what has optimized the operations. It has a paper label, it falls off in the washing process, they put a new one on. And it doesn't matter if it's Fanta or Coke that the bottle had in it previously. So that's a great example of how the standardized design can unlock some benefits in the supply chain. Also, in this case, actually, Coke is experiencing increased sales because they're giving customers a reward when they return a bottle, a discount on the next purchase. And this idea of creating this loyalty mechanism, keeping customers coming back, is also something quite unique or often seen in reuse models. So the idea of deposit and rewards or penalizing consumers for not returning can really create a whole nother relationship with users. So driving more sales and increasing costs, a pretty good case for Coke. They're now scaling up across Latin America and coming to Africa this year. That was all I had for reuse, and I finally feel like I also need to mention material circulation. I am not particularly fond about this. We needed to include it in the guide because, to be honest, what we're seeing out there is that 99.9% of the effort on the market currently goes into material circulation. So designing packaging for recycling, compostable packaging, or substituting to a new material. And as I said, this can be done in an upstream way, but it's still the least priority because you're still counting on a lot of right things to happen after you put that product on the shelf. For the consumer to sort it in the right way or do the right thing with it, for it to be collected and organized and having an infrastructure that can handle it after its end of life. So there are a lot of doubts in the value of these solutions if they actually succeed in avoiding waste by design. The reason why we then have it is, as I said, because this is where everyone focuses. So we need to also give some guidance where people actually are. So we avoid that, for example, paper substitutions become a blanket solution, or compostable plastics are perceived as being better than regular plastics. So that's why. So just to really make that point clear, if you're going to work on these challenges, think about elimination and reuse as the top priorities if you want to design out waste. And then, of course, make sure that end of life, this material will be circulated. And here are some cases that can inspire you on what that could look like. Red Rose, for example, a retailer in the UK as well, has been challenging this idea that all packaging needs to look the same. So they're applying recycled content into their trays. And that means that instead of everything always looking completely new or the same color, things will vary. And this has become a selling point for them, right? That it's, I think they call it the rainbow collection or something like that. That now every time you buy something, it's not necessarily the same packaging because it's made of recycled content. So no virgin input went into it. That doesn't mean it cannot become waste if it's, again, not sorted in the right way and recycled properly. Joy, they rethink the product to avoid waste or reduce the risk of waste. So this is, not milk. Often comes in these. We also have them in Denmark, Tetra Pak packaging that's multi-layered. Most countries can't be recycled because both have paper and plastic and some foil in it, aluminium foil in it. So here, instead of saying, okay, how do we avoid that? Let's make the product solid instead of liquid and have users blended at home, and therefore we can use a fully recyclable, potentially reusable packaging instead. And finally, sometimes the solutions, they lie before products hit the shelf. Here, Patagonia has been working with how to remove these poly bags. When you get clothing through e-commerce or other products, it often has this little bag inside the bag of the different things that you're buying. And often the consumer don't need that at all. They just need all the clothing that they buy in the primary transport packaging. So here Surfdome and Patagonia is trying to remove that before it comes to the user by cutting out the poly bags in the supply chain or at the distribution center. That means that they can actually go back and be recycled, and thereby making sure that they don't end up as waste at the consumers. Whew, okay, I feel like I was speed talking here, but all of this is in the guide. If you're excited, if you're interested, we have all the case studies that I mentioned, many more. We try to really specify what good looks like, where to start if you want to embark on such a journey with rethinking packaging. And also the last chapter, I have laid out some key ingredients to succeeding as a business, like what makes an innovation process successful. Maybe this could also be inspiration for some of you or those of you who are doing the case competition, and some tools of how to take a decision, make a decision-making process in three easy steps. That's all I had, and I think we then still have a good time for Q&A.
Yeah, we do. Thank you so much, Annette. That was very inspiring and interesting, and I can see in the chat that everybody is agreeing. And yeah, thanks, Annette, for your amazing presentation. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And we've also gotten so many questions, and that's amazing as well. So if you're ready, Annette, I will just kind of start off these questions. Well, the first question is, how has your political science degree helped you in your career with circular economies?
Oh, that's a tricky question, right? I mean, actually, I hated political science. I thought it was very, very rough, and a lot of reading and a lot of kind of learning Asian ways of thinking, like going back to the Greeks and Romans and whatnot, like what did they know about how we solve the world's problems? But I must say that in the last years, I've really started to appreciate and also see the connection between what I learned in political science. And I think this actually way of understanding the different ways of doing things, sometimes going back in time, simplifying things and seeing what the system looks like. What are the components in a system or the different variables that we need to keep in mind if we want to change a system? That is really, that's really useful. And that's definitely something I felt that we learned in political science, like looking at the system and understanding the different opportunities and different outcomes. I did a lot of economics in my studies, focused on economics and, this game theory and negotiation techniques that helped me a bit in my salary negotiations for sure. but but I'm not sure. You know, for sure, it does help provide the structures to your thinking and this idea of what systems has looked like, and therefore also what they can look like.
Yeah.
But I would have been like, if I could redo the whole thing, I would have become a marine biologist, like my big hero, Sylvia Earle.
Okay, amazing. Two different things, but nice. Okay. And on to next question. We have Mette here. Can you rethink the packaging without changing the product?
Yes, for sure. I mean, some of the examples I showed only rethink the packaging, right? Like like if we look at a water bottle, we have many companies, as I said, the one with the little thing around the cap, they don't change anything, they just rethink the packaging and take it off. Or water bottles now where the label itself is embodied into the bottle. So you print the label in the bottle and then you have the barcode on top of the cap. That's also a way of reducing waste because you're removing the label, which is often a waste component. So definitely there are ways of just rethinking the packaging itself that can lead to great innovation and potential. But it was more the point that often you need to go beyond that if you want to look at the full spectrum of solutions and opportunities.
And a question kind of in that direction, what are the main reasons companies choose to look at downstream solutions rather than upstream innovations?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I think it's, I mean, I guess it's the same as why probably most of us are still drinking takeaway coffee in a single-use cup, right? I do that, even though I hate it. But often it's just not an option to have a reused cup. Sometimes I forget my own cup. Plenty of excuses. And the basic idea is, birds are going crazy, oh my God. The basic idea is that our brains are so encoded into the ways of doing that we've been doing for years and years. And most and foremostly, you know, we are directed by convenience. So for companies, often the convenient way is the business as usual way. And therefore, if we can just tweak a little bit, and then other than that, continue business as usual, that's of course easier, much easier. And therefore, most of attention goes there because we have short deadlines, because we have, we need to provide value and we're tracked on that on a monthly basis. I mean, there are so many, you could say, mistakes in the system that currently creates the wrong incentives for businesses to actually take a step back and rethink the system. And therefore, they're kind of stuck in this often quite linear thinking of maybe improving a little bit or doing a little bit less bad, but never really getting to the opportunity of rethinking how we create waste by design, avoid waste by design.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting. All that you're saying is very nice. Well, another question here. What are the economic incentives for implementing upstream innovation in packaging and plastic?
So that depends on what we're looking at, right? I gave some examples, like the El Guamo case that you saw, and often in general, these dispensing models. For businesses, packaging often actually take up quite a large cost or fraction of the cost of the total product. So if you can reduce that or even take it away, so only selling the product in a dispensing machine, whatever that you have for 100 years, you're also reducing costs. So either you can save that money and sell the product at the same price, or you can reduce the price point of your product, having a competitive advantage, hopefully getting more customers and selling more. So that's just one example. But there are many examples of how businesses can really extract opportunity here. Also, as I said, material savings is one thing, but this whole idea of integrating technology, IT, making things smart, connecting it to our internet, that has a lot of value for businesses. Getting data essentially, right, and being smarter and being more able to foresee what it is that consumers they want next.
Well, we have, well, I have a chat here I can see. Sorry, I just need to get it out. We have Abine. I would add on that having a systems thinking approach is what could add give. Oh, sorry, I have problems reading the question. I would add on that. Sorry, no ad here. She's just reusing. Okay. Yeah, I'll just go on to the next question. Okay, we have one here from Marcus. What has been the most challenging aspect of putting together the Upstream Innovation Guide?
Oof. I don't even know where to start. I mean, I think actually it's really the structure, right? Sometimes it's providing a simple enough structure for people to understand it and get excited about it without simplifying things so much that we lose the value in the details. So some of the things that we spend a lot of time on, me and my colleagues, is creating these frameworks for decision making or for differentiating between different solutions. So something like, one second, the reuse. We created this framework for the 4 reuse models. And, you know, it's so simple, right? It's basically just setting up 2 axes and saying, look, you can reuse at home, you can reuse on the go, you can either refill packaging, your own packaging, or you could return it to someone else. But this took, I don't know, 1,000 iterations before we suddenly one evening saw like, hey, what about this? This works. We can do this. We can actually plot all the models that we found. I scouted more than 100 examples of reuse, and all of them can be plotted according to these 2 variables. So it works. So sometimes actually landing on a structure that can help people simplify things. And again, back to political science, I think that's really what you learn, trying to come up with a framework or trying to come up with a nice little diagram that shows kind of from this to this means this. So that was one of the tricky things. And then secondly, I would just highlight kind of getting everything into one place, asking all the tricky questions that we hear when we're around doing presentations, trying to come up with, again, a simple answer to all the tricky questions that are out there. So really having a one-stop shop for businesses or anyone wanting to do upstream innovation. Yeah, making it comprehensive yet simple. Maybe I can summarize it as that.
Yes. Okay, another question here. So between elimination, material circulation, and reusing, what is the toughest one to implement for businesses?
It's reuse, for sure. I would say, because it often requires this completely fundamentally different way of providing value. Think about, you know, going from selling water in a bottle to selling water in a tap where people bring their own bottle. Or think about selling pasta in such dispensing model. Or think about, you know, shipping to customers in these reusable shippers instead of the normal ones. It's not just the consumer interaction that's different and like telling that story of how they need to change how they normally buy things. It's the supply chain. Like, how do you set up who picks it up, that packaging, at the customer's house or at the supermarket if they return it there? Where does it go to be washed? Can we wash it? Who wash it? Do we need to buy someone else to wash it? Can it go into our existing machinery for putting ice cream or water or whatnot into a package? Or do we need to rebuild that whole thing? There are so many issues on or like, I wouldn't say issues, but like challenges on the supply chain side that really requires a rethink, and often a quite substantial investment upfront with a break-even point that lies a bit into the future. For sure, these solutions can and will break even because you are saving money and it makes more sense often, but it does take a while. So it's almost kind of a battle of, again, how we measure value and challenging that businesses are often required to show value on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, and cannot maybe justify a big investment where the payback it's 3 or 5 years into the future. And that is often the case with these reuse models. But as I also hopefully have shown, it's not holding the biggest businesses back. The biggest FMCGs in the world are completely committed and currently full on piloting new ways of doing this. So I'm sure it will happen sooner or later, but definitely it will require new ways of accounting and partnerships and standardization to lower these costs, especially on the supply chain side. And then, of course, consumers with an open mindset.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So just to kind of, okay, the next question. Do you think there is another level above upstream innovation?
Another level? I don't know, does the person who asked the question have something in mind?
Do the person have something in their mind? I'm just getting it here.
I mean, I can definitely say that
just yeah.
Sometimes I think, you know, we also need to be pragmatic as activists, right? And this guide has, as I said, focused on plastic and packaging and not really looking at the products that are inside. So the level beyond this would be that everything that we buy and sell are circular by design. So, you know, if you buy clothing made of the cheapest fabrics in the world that are mixed between, you know, plastics and natural materials, for example, let's say it lasts half a year, you're not going to use it, but it comes in a reusable shipper. I mean, that's great, but the main problem has not really been solved, right? Which is this clothing, which almost essentially is single use in itself. So I think that is definitely where I would love the world to go, is that we also start thinking across the different sectors. So when we're solving food crisis or food challenges, we often see, you know, great examples of localized production and local food, you know, grown in a regenerative way, keeping the nutrition of the soil, all of these amazing products. But then they come in shit single-use packaging. And opposite, you know, as I said, we have many great reusable or upstream packaging solutions with linear products inside. So that could really be the next step, that we start thinking not just systemic within the sectors, but also systemically across the different sectors.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. The next question, sorry, I'm just getting them so you say that incremental innovation is not enough to effectively implement upstream innovation, but how can companies that want to rethink their packaging do it so through radical innovation in the upstream side of their product value chain? This is related to the facts that supply chains are very sliced, and two, the lack of professionals that might not offer the materials need to radically innovate your packaging. So the real question is, how can companies that want to rethink their packaging do it through radical innovation?
Yeah, I think I understand the question, but yeah, it's a big question, right? It's like, it is. How do you then do this? I mean, and you're pointing to the fact that, yeah, people are maybe not having the capabilities of the mindset, and two, currently supply chains are sliced and maybe not owned by the producer or the brand we have in mind. Definitely point taken. And we're definitely seeing that with the FMCGs that we're working with. So we're trying to take a step back again and saying, look, okay, what constitutes useful, fruitful innovation process. And in this guide also, as I said, we're highlighting these key ingredients to succeeding. And often it's actually, for example, about making sure that on a team working with challenges like this, you have mixed professional, just like the spirit of DANSIC, that you make sure doesn't just sit with the R&D people or the production people who have always done something and are really specialized in optimizing that. But you get maybe graduates in with new, fresh ideas, or you get designers in who think in a different way. We're also showing how these processes often require quite significant earmarked funding. So you really have budget to test and learn. And what I mean is basically fail and fail and fail and fail before you reach something that could be possible. We're also pointing to the fact that often, and this is the last one, there's 5, but you can read about that. You need external input. You really need partnerships. You cannot often make these solutions on your own. for example, as you say, given the supply chains, how they're constructed, especially in something like the fashion industry, well, you need to work with your competitors, you need to work with your suppliers, you need to work with the logistics company to make this new system potentially both design it, what it could look like, but also definitely implement it, pilot it and then implement. So I hope that gives some direction, but I mean, as I said, this is tricky. It's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully these more than 100 examples in the guide and beyond are giving people comfort that it can happen. And I think that is really what I'm experiencing, working with these massive brands and feeling their appetite to actually start the innovation process of uncovering how to do it differently.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And that was actually our last question. We are unfortunately running out of time, but we may have some more questions left, but you have already touched upon them in the answers, or sorry, in your presentations and also in your answering here now. So thank you so much, Annette. This was amazing, and it was very inspiring presentation that you had and all of your answers. So thank you so much for joining in, and I hope everyone who has been attending this that you enjoyed it and you got something out of it, and we're so pleased that you would come join us here on this afternoon. So thank you so much to everyone, and especially to you, Annette. It was amazing.
You're welcome, and good luck. I mean, I really look forward to seeing the outcome of your case competition.
Yeah, we do too. Thank you so much.